Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with author, life story professional, and long-distance hiker Diane Gansauer. At age 61, she committed to something great, hiking the entire length of the Continental Divide Trail from Mexico to Canada. Over a 7-year journey through mountains, rivers, and forests, she continued her work officiating celebrations of life. By the time she completed all 3,100 miles of the trail, she had honored more than 400 life stories through memorial services and gatherings. Her book, The Waypoints, chronicles the wisdom that overlapped her experience of these lives and the trail, like stacked stones on the path, guiding the way. We get into her whole story from her base in Colorado. Enjoy. Diane, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
It's great to be here, Joe. Thank you.
You bet. So let's begin our journey into your work and life by asking you this. 5 years ago, this pandemic, so many things changed. How did you get through the pandemic of 2020, and how has it influenced the way you do things now in 2025?
Well, in 2020, I was working as a funeral celebrant. I had initiated a program for funeral celebrants. I can explain that briefly, what that is.
Yeah.
For a group of funeral homes in Metro Denver. A funeral celebrant is someone who gathers the story of the loved one who has passed away. And it centers on that in the delivering of a memorial gathering of any kind. It could be rather ceremonial, or it could be at the local pub and you raise a toast. It depends on what families want to do. So I was in the world of honoring the lives of people who had passed away. You know, God bless the people in the healthcare fields who were on the front lines in saving lives. But as we all know, many lives were lost. And you don't hear much said about the people in the funeral homes. But let me tell you, it's a very, very intense experience as well to be working in funeral homes in a pandemic where the world shut down and we all were not allowed to gather. So the way I just explained my work, you can tell it's about gathering people. It's about being human when there's a loss, and you're putting each other together where you can put your arm around somebody and cry together and share stories. And that came to a whopping, if not halt. The ceremonies were a very small group of very mournful people.
Yeah.
So my world, my personal role, what I consider my life's calling, it took me 60 years to find it, but I eventually did.
Yeah.
Really changed. And for me personally, and honestly, I haven't said this to many people, but to answer your question honestly, what happened to me, and because my role was changed and I didn't want to lose a job, and the place where I worked didn't want to lose me, someone had to greet families when they came to identify the bodies of loved ones that they had not been permitted to be with when they passed away. Remember, people were not allowed in hospitals.
Yeah.
They were not allowed in nursing homes. They were not next to the bed of the lady or man who was dying. I was the person in Metro Denver for 12 funeral homes when people came to identify the bodies. That's the role I was assigned.
Wow.
For 6 weeks, 6 days a week.
Wow.
You don't go through that untransformed. And some people wanted a prayer set. Most people just wanted to have someone accompany them through this foreign land of death. And that, I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah.
For several weeks, that was me for the largest group of funeral homes in Denver.
Wow.
So when I came out of that experience, I went back into what a lot of people were longing for, and it wasn't the companionship of a lot of people, but it was nature. So I went back into my love, my passion, which is going deep into nature. And call it an irony or coincidence, I no longer believe in that. But I partnered up with someone whom I'd never met before, met online through a Facebook group. And she had been a nurse in the pandemic at the beginning of Italy. which was one of the most intense experiences of the pandemic in the world.
Yeah.
And here we were like, oh my God, you're the one I'm going to go on this hike with. So I would say how it transformed me to later is, well, I had already, but this intensified my experience of the value of life by being next to people who were grieving.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? What was your dream
When I was
job?
a kid, this field didn't exist. Well, clergy existed, and there's a ministry of the small m aspect to this, in that you're taking care of people,
Yeah,
you're accompanying people.
sure.
When I was a kid, I'm sure I didn't know what I wanted to be. I grew up in a very Catholic family, went to Catholic girls' school for 12 years. Whatever I wanted to be was probably something a nun would have guided me into.
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
it was a very protected life. I loved the arts. I dance in particular, classical forms was part of my life since I was a little child. And I think I wanted to go into something in the arts right out of college. So I studied dance and theater and voice training music in college, and was in New York City right after graduating from college. And so it was going to be something in the arts fields. And then that really, through other circumstances in my life, primarily a significant injury, that changed as well. But as a kid, I, I don't like a lot of kids. I don't think I knew what I wanted to do, but something in a creative field appealed to me. And here I am. I mean, what I do is creative in that it's a storytelling
yeah.
profession.
Where were you born and raised, and what were these foundational elements that gave you this bug for adventure and storytelling and loving the arts? How did that happen?
How'd that happen? Well, I grew up in the Monterey Carmel area of the central coast of California, which right there, and that's one of the most, that's a garden spot of the earth. So here I am in this protected little atmosphere of a Catholic girls' school in one of the garden spots of the earth. I had a completely, a beautifully warped perspective of life. I mean, I'm sure I thought everything was beautiful and lovely, and it's not. So, being growing up like that, I had the freedom to think about going into the arts in some form, quite frankly. I had the freedom to do that, and I just felt at home there for a long, long time. The adventurous side is I was the baby in the family, another protected role. And I had very adventurous older siblings, very much out in the outdoors. My sister was riding horse a lot, and my brothers were in the backcountry. I mean, hiking and athletic. And now and then they would take along their little sister. So I think the bug honestly came mostly from my brothers in that love there was something in me that became adventurous but didn't show up until later in life, really.
So the one thing about life is that it takes a while for us to figure out why we're here and what we need to do, like with your adventure. Who has been that inspiration, that hero for you in your life that's kind of guided you to find who you are and to do this adventure at 61?
Um, hmm. I had some excellent teachers in my education. And I will say, I have made a point of going back to each of them and thanking them. And oh, what a fun experience that is to tell a teacher how appreciated they were. And
Yeah.
I mean, I sent my wonderful English teacher from high school, I sent her a copy of my book out of the blue, tracked her down. She's around 90 years old, hadn't heard from me in a long time. So I had some wonderful teachers who helped me think outside the box, even in the box I was in of a very strict Catholic girls' school education. The adventurous side of me, man, I think I always had a little bit of a rebel in me, but I can't honestly, Joe, point to one inspiring person in that. But I did look up to my older brothers, especially my oldest brother, quite a bit, like a hero, an iconic figure in the family, super adventurous man. and he would dispel his wisdom on his youngest sister now and then. I mean, this guy spent a year isolated in Alaska, only he survived. The guy who didn't had a movie made about his story.
Yeah.
But my brother did something very similar and survived, and I helped him get ready for that trip. So if I had to point to someone who is like the most adventurous figure in my life, it was my oldest brother. And on this hike that we're referring to, so 3,100 miles from border to border, Mexico to Canada. I don't mean the U.S. border to border, Mexico to Canada is 3,100 miles. 1,000 of that I did hike with my oldest brother.
Wow.
So he had a lot to do in inspiring and adventurous side.
Talk to me about your career arc. Take me from the beginnings of your work to where you are today.
The beginnings, well, like many, I'm told many people, at least in the U.S., maybe it's broader than that, they have multiple careers.
Yeah.
So do you want me to talk about from the very beginning or just this career?
Probably from the beginning, just how you evolved to where you are today, to give
How I
kind of
am.
a snapshot.
Okay. So coming out of college, I was dance trained, ballet, classical, modern, jazz. You know, a little kid, you're on your tap shoes and all that stuff. You know,
Yeah.
a little bit of even classic East Indian. I just had an interest in moving all my life. Came out of college in Virginia to live in Manhattan. Not long after I got there, I had a very bad knee injury that had me on crutches and physical therapy. And in those days, they didn't do knee surgery very successfully, so I avoided that. But I had to make a switch, and I went behind the scenes in managing performances, mostly dance performances, some music performances. Was in the right place at the right time to get some National Endowment for the Arts and New York City Arts Council funding. I was managing some shows off Broadway. I was like 23. It was great.
Yeah.
Life was good.
Oh yeah.
Poor as a church mouse, as you used to say. Like had 3 or 4 roommates living in some poverty-stricken third or fourth floor walk up in Lower Manhattan. You know, it was living the life, living large. And from there, went to manage a dance company in Washington D.C. Started to want to do something in nonprofit management at a more slightly more professional and polished level, and frankly makes a little bit better income. Got a master's in business in Pittsburgh, met my husband, my future husband there. We were married. I managed a wind symphony orchestra on tour out of there. Went back to Washington, D.C. Long story short, I evolved in other nonprofit fields in healthcare and then in land and wildlife conservation, which I really had a heart for the outdoors, see. And so I gravitated there eventually. Rose high in the ranks of government agencies managing land and wildlife conservation programs. We had moved to Colorado by then, wanted to get out of the Washington, D.C. area, didn't want to raise our one child there, moved to Colorado, get a little more space around us. And I was deputy director of what's called Great Outdoors Colorado, which manages half the lottery funds in this state for outdoor recreation and conservation programs. It became that kind of money, when you're around that dispensing of money, and I oversaw the grant programs, it gets very political, with a small p, political, not party politics, but I wasn't good at that, and I hated it.
Yeah.
Wasn't good at it and hated it. It's not a great combination to
Right.
stay in the
Yeah.
field.
No good.
I mean, I was good at technical things, but that aspect of it was inevitable, and I didn't enjoy it. But along the way, I had indirectly worked on some projects that were on the property of the founder of the company of funeral homes that I ended up working for, the largest provider of funeral services and cemetery services in North America, which, let's be honest, might mean in the world.
Yeah.
And he was aware of my work in managing these funding programs and appreciated that. And he took me aside and somehow sensed I was ready for a career change. And he's the one who put me in touch with the Denver Circle market of funeral homes that wanted to start a celebrant program, which was new as a concept. And that's what I did. And that was in 2013 that I really took quite a drop in income as well. And my husband was so good about that. He said, when was the last time you were happy with your job? He supported us making a big shift as a household. And I haven't looked back. It's the best thing I've ever done in my life. This is such satisfying work because you're not dealing with any kind of politics, or you're just dealing with people who are hurting and in need of assistance, and my skill set could be of help to them. By then I had also trained in storytelling and as a celebrant, which means primarily training in the history of ceremony and ritual worldwide, because I work with whoever comes in the door, wherever they are on their spirituality spectrum or their cultural traditions. I work with that family. I never pretend to be of their, if their religion is not my own, I don't pretend to be their clergy, but I can incorporate their loved one's story no matter what the background is. And that's where I go.
So I would imagine at 61, embarking on a huge journey that you took, you would have to you would have to realize and learn things, have revelations about your life. What did you learn about your existence and your place on this planet and ultimately the dream that you went after?
Yeah. So I had, as our daughter grew up and then, I became an empty nester, I had more time to do my own, just self-discovery. That's nothing new. That happens to a lot of people. And I was really drawn to hiking. That was in the early 2000s. I started hiking. Here's the Colorado Trail. It's over 500 miles. And when I had finished that, I had crossed paths with the Continental Divide Trail. Yeah. And in a particularly naive moment, so naive, I knew it at the time and was laughing about it. I said, well, I'll just keep going. So I went to the bottom of New Mexico, the border with Mexico, and began at the age of 61 in 2017 to start hiking north. And I was what they call a section hiker. If you do it all at once, you're a through hiker. It takes you maybe 5 months or so. But I took 7 summers to finish that, to get to Canada, top of Montana, across the border into Canada. And along the way, what I didn't anticipate, Joe, but very early on, somewhere in the desert of New Mexico, where you're walking for over 100 miles before you get to shade trees. It's serious, by U.S. standards, serious desert. I started realizing that what nature was teaching me and what my backcountry backpacking experience was teaching me seemed to cross over with what I most loved about lives I was encountering in these life stories. And so what I learned about myself, right off the bat, and it's one of the first waypoints, my book is the Waypoints. One of the first waypoints or chapters in the book is about travel lightly, is you should not be carrying anything you don't need to carry, which a backpacker knows immediately. Leave home the kitchen sink. Leave home your extra socks even. You're counting ounces. And in the desert, you're carrying especially heavy loads because you have to carry your water before you can get to the next water. But I was also learning that some of these lives that frankly had it far more difficult than I did. Come on, I just described a silver spoon childhood. Yeah. Growing up with this proverbial silver spoon. I know that's true. But I was encountering people who had it a lot tougher. And yet they were so resilient. They were so focused. They had a vision for where they wanted to go, especially, I must say, the people who immigrated to this country. They had a vision for what they felt was so important to hang on to. And they also knew what to put down. just what not to carry, leave it behind, keep going. What I learned about myself was that I could discern this crossover that I had between nature and my personal experience in the challenges of nature and the lives of people around me, my neighbors and community. That I could discern that, and I hadn't heard anybody else speak to that. I certainly, just to say probably the obvious, is you go through something like that in your 60s and you're learning something about courage and willingness to take a risk that you might not have seen in yourself before.
Yeah.
That you also, your BS barometer gets really finely tuned.
Yeah. Yeah. I would imagine so.
You learn what matters and what's worth holding on to, and you learn what is just, okay, this is not something I'm going to take with me.
Yeah. So that's amazing. So let me ask you this. At this point in your life, what gets you up every day? What motivates you to do all of these things that you're doing?
Well, kind of like this, Joe. I love talking to people about what I experienced if they're interested.
Yeah.
And I love listening to their stories still. And I think now, because I'll turn 70 in a few months, which is a big difference from 61, by the way.
Yeah.
Is my risk is different, but I still enjoy taking a risk. For example, in the next few days, I will put myself in my car with my little trailer behind, and I will go out and trail angel. And a trail angel is someone who takes care of the needs that come up for people who are on long distance hikes. And I know this particular trail, Continental Divide Trail, so well. I know where they come out near a road. And so I know where they need water. I know where someone, if they're low on supplies, needs a ride into town. I also have wilderness first aid certification. I know, I've taken care of a few people in minor injuries. So the risk I'm taking now is, which I still enjoy, that element is let's go have an adventure today.
Yeah.
But it's of a different kind. I'll put myself where I will encounter people I've never met who might need some help.
So if you had a dream tonight, ran into an 18-year-old version of you getting ready to charge out into the world, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've led, the wisdom you've accumulated, what advice would you give your younger self?
Be open to surprise.
Yeah.
It's a lot of what I've done with hiking involves a tremendous amount of logistics, and that can be fun even to plan. It's like you're to plan your vacation. Part of the fun of the vacation was planning what you'd like to do and where you'd like to go. And I'm no different, and I've planned. I'm a pretty good planner, but I have to say, is you can overdo it. Be open to something you didn't see coming. It might be the greatest gift you'll get that day, and run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely, the trail surprises you. You can make some great plans, and then the trail laughs at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that you should laugh back. So I would tell my 18-year-old self, be open to surprise. It might be a new path.
So of all of these adventures you've been on, of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
Well, I am proud that I finished this trail
Yeah.
at the age of 67. And I'm grateful that I lived long enough to get smarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that's pride, but it's mixed in with some gratitude and some humility that I not only finished it, not as some athletic accomplishment, which it is, I'm not unaware of that, but it's a personal accomplishment. I mean, that I let myself learn and change. Yeah, pride's a funny word, though. I mean, it can go sideways on you.
Yeah.
What I'm happiest about is, I grew up, all of us kids in my family went off to boarding school at a young age. I did not know my siblings all that well. And to have walked 1,000 miles with my oldest brother, who's 10 years older than I. So when we finished, he was 77, and we had a dang good time.
Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
That's wonderful. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, everyone that gets your books, everyone that knows your story, that's worked with you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. You could have said that one to me a few days ago.
Sorry. This is
My
the this
perception,
this is the the therapy portion of the interview.
my perception of who I am, honestly, is that I have a pretty interesting story.
Yeah.
And part of my interesting story is that I have found interest in other people's stories, and that we all have a chance to make our own story. That doesn't mean we're in control of everything, but we do have control of our response to what happens, as well as our focus and what kind of person we want to become. And my perception of me is I've really tried. I have genuinely tried to become a better and wiser person. Have I been always successful? Hell no. But I have tried.
So the Waypoints is your wonderful book. If anyone wants to grab a copy, or if they want to reach out, or if they want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Okay, the book is called The Waypoints from 400 Farewells and 3,000 Miles. If you just do Waypoints in Amazon or you come, Barnes and Noble online, it's on all the major online retailers. You might come up with other books. So look for the full name or look for a kind of a pyramid shape of rocks on the trail,
Okay.
because that's a visual of it. And I'm also on Substack, dianegansauer.substack.com.
Okay. Excellent. Diane, what a wonderful, inspirational, beautiful story of it's just never too late to do what you want to do with your life. Thank you so much. I
My
appreciate it. Best
pleasure.
of luck with everything. It's
Thank
been
you.
wonderful. Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time. Looking to get new clients to your business through cold calling or email marketing? At Agency Y, they envision a world in which small and big companies have equal chances to win new customers in the market. Their purpose is to bring parity and reduce the gap between large and small firms with the help of their cold calling and cold email marketing services. Use the code JOEDIMINO10 at www.agencyyy.org/coldcallingjoe.php or www.agencyyy.org/emailmarketingjoe.php to get 10% off your first order. This is Joe Dimino of Neon Jazz and Famous Interviews, and I stand behind Agency Y to meet your business dreams.